In this session, we're going to look at the determinants of those who have both private medical insurance while also being eligible and claiming a medical card. So looking for people who have two types of health cover. The cover through the state, through the medical card, which covers GP visits, hospitals, consultants, and also some prescriptions and expenses in chemists. And then those who purchase private health insurance, which also covers some of the same things. It doesn't cover GPs and a lot of expenses in chemists, but would cover hospital costs, consultant costs, and stays in hospital. And why it is that people would have both, why would they be willing to go and purchase private health insurance at a substantial cost when they're entitled to the medical card, which is means tested for most groups, but is almost universal for those aged over 70. So in this analysis, our dependent variable is those people who have both private health insurance and the medical card. So there's a certain group of people out there who are covered twice. The variables we're going to choose to try and explain the determinants that lead to people having both types of health cover are age, gender, region, marital status, economic status, self-assessed health status, and the presence or otherwise of an existing medical condition. This data comes from the 2001 Quarterly National Household Survey, which was administered by the Central Statistics Office. And the CSO run ad hoc or irregular modules where they ask a series of questions on a particular area. And in the third quarter of 2001, they covered health. So they looked at health utilization, health cover, and the prevalence of some medical illnesses. And then they also collected the other socioeconomic data: age, gender, region, marital status, economic status. So we can use this to gauge the relationship between some explanatory variables and a dependent variable. And in this instance, our dependent variable is going to be the decision to purchase private medical insurance while also being eligible for the state-run medical card. So we'll look at some summary statistics of the data. So the Quarterly National Household Survey in Q3 2001 had 44,844 observations, so a fairly substantial sample. And of that nearly 45,000, over 1,000 had both types of medical cover. So 1,082, or 2.4% of the sample, had both types of medical cover. We can see that almost 30% were covered by the medical card, 28.7 plus 2.4, just over 30%. Almost 50% were covered by private insurance, so 46% who only had private insurance and 2.4% who had both. And then about a quarter of the population had neither health cover. They neither had or were entitled to a medical card nor went out and purchased private health insurance. So about 10,000 of the sample, or a quarter, had neither type of cover. So our focus will be on those who have both. Can we get analysis of the factors that determine why somebody might be in here? It's fairly clear why somebody would have the medical card. That is a means tested benefit. Although in 2001 Q3 was just the stage when the over 70s medical card became universal. So Charlie McCreevy, in his 2001 budget in December 2000, announced the introduction of the universal medical card for the over 70s, and that came into existence in July 2001. So when this sample was collected in the third quarter 2001, all the over 70s would have been entitled to a medical card. Since then, of course, the universal medical card for the over 70s has been changed. Brian Lenihan, the last government, tried to remove the universal entitlement and ended up facing a huge outpouring of protest and angst from the OAPs, and eventually backtracked on the decision, but didn't fully backtrack. It is a means tested medical card, but the means for a single person is an income of €700 per week before they lose their entitlement to the medical card, and for a couple it's an income of $1,400, and 97% of OAPs come in under those income levels, so it's still almost universal. Back in 2001, about half of the population went out and chose to purchase private health insurance. In 2001, the two companies were VHI and Bupa, and they purchased a policy from either one of those. And then 23% were not entitled to the medical card, and then did not purchase private health insurance. In some instances it might be said that these people lack medical cover, but any person who's normally resident in Ireland will be covered by the public system. So if you have healthcare needs and you're normally resident in the country, you will be covered. The issue is, of course, the waiting that you may have to undertake in the public system, and you won't be covered for things like GPs, chemists, consultants, etc. Things which you have to pay for. But if you need an operation or a procedure, you're not going to be left high and dry because you don't have medical cover, but you may have to wait. And the issue about waiting times is one of the key determinants of those who purchase private health insurance. So we have our overall sample of almost 45,000. If we break it down by some of the explanatory variables, so the first variable we look at is region. We can see some regional variation in those who choose to purchase private insurance when having the medical card. So it ranges from 1.6% in the border region up to 3.7% in the Midwest, so Limerick, Clare and North Tipperary, and it's lowest in the border and Midlands, also quite high in the Southwest, the Cork, Kerry region, and then somewhere in the twos then for the other areas, the West including Galway, Dublin, and the Southeast, Wexford, Carlow, Kilkenny. So these are the range throughout the sample of the variable we're looking at. You can see how the different other variables change as well. Entitlement to a medical card at its lowest in Dublin, only 20% of the population entitled to a medical card, where it's almost 40% in the border region. And then the decision to purchase private health insurance varies sort of opposite to that, at its highest in Dublin with almost 52% covered, and then is at its lowest in the border region. That would be a determinant of income determining who's eligible for a medical card, and then income being one of the key determinants of those who purchase private health insurance. And then the range of neither is scattered throughout the country. If we look at medical cover by age, we can begin to see the impact of Charlie McCreevy's decision to offer the universal medical card to the over 70s. So for most age groups, medical card entitlement increases with age. So 18 to 24, 18%. It is largely unfixed, I suppose, up to 45 to 54, increases to 55 to 64, and then jumps to 60% plus for those in the 65 and over age category, largely determined by those who are 70 and over. Private insurance again varies by group, tends to be lowest amongst the youngest who don't need health cover and don't purchase it, and lowest amongst the 65 plus who have the medical card, rises up to those between about 35 and 55, and then drops off. But we can see a distinct pattern in those who have both. It is less than 1% for most age categories. Rises to 2% for the 55 to 64 category, but then jumps to a massive 8.3% for the 65 and over. So clearly, when looking at the determinants of who has medical insurance when being entitled to a medical card, the over 65 are one group that should have substantial focus. Then who have no cover, you can see that this is focused on the young. And this is the idea that those aged 34 and younger make up 75% or make up or have the bulk of those who have no cover, not 75%, but the bulk of those who have no cover are in the younger age categories, and then falls off, and only 7% of those aged 65 and over, those who have the highest healthcare needs, have no medical cover. So the variable in question does seem to vary by age. We're looking at it by gender and marital status, no real distinction by gender, slightly higher for females and males, but not hugely, and the other variables are muchly the same. When you see it by marital status, we can see the impact that perhaps age has, single people having the youngest or the lowest level of double coverage, and then widowed or largely older people having the highest level of double coverage. And then the medical card at its highest amongst those who are widowed, and private insurance amongst those largest amongst those who are married, perhaps those with families. And neither coverage then again largest amongst those who are single, again young. Looking at by economic status and health status, again we can pick up the effect of age. For those who have both covers, in employment it's only 0.7%. That's largely because most of those in employment would have incomes above the income thresholds for the medical card. The unemployed people, only 1.3% of those have both, Again, they'd be entitled to the medical card and perhaps don't have the means to purchase private health insurance, but 1.7% people did. You remember this is the 2001 data when unemployment in Ireland was quite low, so of the 44,000 sample, only 1,000 are unemployed. Unemployment rate, I'd imagine, back in 2001 of about 4%, far different from what we have now. And again, not in labour force the highest, about 5% of those not in the labour force having both types of medical cover, and the main group of those not in the labour force who have both would be those who are retired, those who have left the labour force and are in retirement. And you can look at the different issues by the different types of insurance and the huge variety. You can see for the medical card, unemployed, 50% have it, whereas only 10% for those in employment. Whereas private insurance, 60% of those in employment have private insurance, as opposed to only 20% of those who are unemployed. So substantial variation across the different groups. For self-assessed health, so this is the person asked to judge their own health, which generally is considered to be a fairly reliable indicator of health status. The people themselves can be fairly good judges, but it might have some issues with relativity, that one person's good may not be equivalent to somebody else's. But again, you can see that the decision to purchase both increases as health status decreases. So as you go from excellent to very good to fair to poor, it goes from 1.3 to 5.8%. So it does seem to be some health explanation to those who purchase private health insurance when having the medical card, that those who have poorer health tend to be purchasing private health insurance. And again, this could be down to age. Younger people would generally rate their health as being higher, whereas those who are older people might be more in the fair and poor category. And in the presence of a listed condition, so there's 18 conditions listed in the Quarterly National Household Survey Health module. 29,000 people said they had none. 1.2% of those people had both types of cover, and over 15,000 people said they had at least one of those conditions, and nearly 5% of those people had private health insurance. So again, some link perhaps between health status and the decision to purchase private health insurance. When looking at the methods, OLS was used, so a simple regression, to estimate the effect of the set of socioeconomic variables on the decision to buy private health insurance while also holding a medical card. And then after the initial regression is run, a significance of subsets of the socioeconomic variables were tested using the F-test procedure. So you looked at different subsets and essentially ran a restricted and unrestricted regression to see were the subsets significant, did they have a role to play, although this was run using Stata rather than running the restricted and unrestricted regression. Here are the overall regression results. So the dependent variable is those who have both medical card and private health insurance, over 1,000 people. So it takes a value of 1 for those who have both cover and 0 otherwise, and it's ran then against a set of explanatory variables. So we have age, region, gender, marital status, employment status, self-assessed health status, and the presence or otherwise of one of the listed conditions. So in all cases, a base variable is chosen, or a base category is chosen. So one of the categories we saw in the summary stats is left out, and that becomes the base variable. And we're looking for the impact of these variables on the decision to have both types of medical cover. So we can see that there are some variables that have a significant effect that can be picked up across the regression. So the asterisks here on the right hand side indicate the level of significance, so the strength of the test at which we can reject the null hypothesis that the coefficient is not 0. So 3 asterisks means at the 1% level, the highest level of significance, 2 asterisks means the 5% level, and 1 asterisk means at the 10% level. So we have a number of variables that are significant at the 1% level, a couple, or at least one anyway, that's significant at the 5% level, and one that's significant at the 10% level. Looking at some of the variables, so for age, the base category is 18 to 24. So the coefficients give us a change in the decision to purchase both or have both types of medical cover relative to somebody aged 18 to 24. So for most groups there is no difference. So for example, those aged 45 to 54 are not significantly different in the decision to have both than those aged 18 to 24. The coefficient is not significantly different from 0, although it is positive. Its t-value is less than 2, and its p-value is greater than 0.13. So that would only be significant at the 13% level. If we said that that was different from 0, we'd be making a mistake about 1 chance in 6, 1 chance in 7, which is too high. You're looking for a chance of no more than 1 or 10, and closer to 1 in 20 or closer to 1 in 100. So in the age variable, the one significant category is age 65 plus, as we would expect. The coefficient is positive. So those aged 65 plus are more likely to have both types of cover relative to those aged 18 to 24. The t statistic is almost 17, so substantially greater than 2, and the p-value is some number less than 0.005. So that would be highly significant. So it does seem that age is a strong determinant as the summary starts showing up. When it comes to region, the base category is Dublin. So Dublin has been omitted, so all these coefficients are relative to Dublin, and we can see in some there's a reduced probability of a region, of a person from a particular region having both types of cover. In other instances, there's an increase. So people from the border, the Midlands, the Mid-East and the South-East are all significantly less likely to have both types of cover relative to somebody in Dublin, whereas somebody in the Midwest and the Southwest is significantly more likely to have both types of cover. Again, reflecting what we saw in the summary stats. The West is no different to Dublin, so the coefficient is exactly the same, so it's not different from 0, t-value less than 2, p-value greater than 0.10. So at the 11% significance, we could only accept that that coefficient is not 0. When it comes to gender, no difference, so female is the base category, the coefficient on males isn't significant. When it comes to marital status, single is the base category and the only significant variable is widowed. Again, it has a positive coefficient, likely largely related to age. Positive and significant at the 10% level, coefficient of 0.06. We can see that t-stat is not greater than 2, but given the sample size, the level of 2 is our rule of thumb, and it's generally a rule of thumb at the 5% level, so we'd reject that at the 5% level, but at the 10% level we would say that that's a positive coefficient. When it comes to labour force status, the base category is those who are in employment, and we can see no difference between those who are employed and unemployed in terms of the decision to have both. But there is a difference between those who are unemployed and are in employment and not in the labour force. Positive coefficient and significant at the 1% level. Again, likely related to age. Those who are retired, over 70, and entitled to the Universal Medical Card as existed in 2001. When it comes to self-assessed health status, the base category is excellent, and the only significant coefficient is fair, but unlike the variables or the summary stats, we see here that those with fair health are less likely to purchase private health insurance. This is significant at the 1% level. So this suggests perhaps a problem with the estimation here, the fact that we're getting this counterintuitive result that those with lower or worse health status are less likely to purchase and have both types of cover. It could be a problem due to what's referred to as multiclinearity. It's likely that age is dominating the effect here, and it's likely there's a relationship between the age variables and the self-assessed health status variables. They're in a sense measuring the same thing, and that would be influencing the coefficient estimate in the self-assessed health status. And the final variable is a dummy variable just for any listed condition. The base category is no listed condition. So again, it's positive and significant at the 1% level. So those who are ill and perhaps have higher healthcare needs, have a particular illness, are more likely to have both types of cover, which does tie into what we'd expect to see in the self-assessed health variable, but we're not seeing it come up in the results. Here are the F-tests undertaken. So various subsets of the variables were basically set equal to 0. So this is a joint hypothesis test, so it's taking all the variables in different subsets at the same time. The joint test is that they're all equal to 0 at the same time. So the region variable takes the 7 region variables and test whether they are jointly equal to 0. The F-stat is 13.71. Don't have the critical value offhand, but the outcome of that hypothesis is to reject the null hypothesis, that yes, the region variables are different from 0, do have a role to play in explaining the decision to have both types of cover. The age variable is a huge F value of 139.17, way out in the region of rejection, far in excess of whatever the critical value could be. So age is a strong and dominant role to play in determining the dependent variable here. Marital status doesn't seem to have any impact. People whether are single, married, widowed, etc. Again, perhaps picked up by age, but an F value only of 1.75. Economic status does seem to have a role to play between employed, unemployed, and not in the labour force. Again, perhaps because of the universal medical card for those who are not in the labour force aged over 70, and the health status is significant on those, we said, for perhaps counterintuitive reason that those with poorer health appear to have a lower probability of purchasing or having both types of cover. Now this could be down to multilinearity in the data. So that is the run through of the decision to purchase private health insurance when being entitled to a medical card, the issues involved, the data, the summary statistics, the regression results, and some basic hypothesis tests. Thank you.